Man, after rewatching a lot of the Six Nations, I don't really know if I was supposed to be disappointed intensely or not. But other than Ireland, not really a lot looking up for the boys in up north. But let's get into it.
I need all the wins, yeah. Ain't no L's, I gotta get it, no call it quits, yeah. Gotta keep on moving no matter how hard.
Here comes Danny Tusizawa, back to Baker, Baker with the fin. Kurt Baker in for DC, and this may well do it old glory with the try. The New Zealand Sevens legend, Kurt Baker with the cherry on top.
Can you believe it?
Welcome back to the On the Line Rugby Podcast, a show brought to you by the Blue Sports Network. I'm your host, Mike Nagaishi, and welcome back. Man, I gotta say, to start off, Ireland is definitely probably going to win the Six Nations this year with the way they're playing. I am so happy that they're blowing away teams. I mean, don't get me wrong. Okay, I understand that Italy may not be necessarily an England, but after seeing the shellacking that they gave to France, I think it was very well warranted against a very, I'm not going to say hot, but much improved Italian side. And Ireland took care of business, and I'm very proud of them for that. Man, I gotta say, my prediction for Harry Crowley was on point on Friday. He's a pure menace with a double pump and offload. I think that's what they've been looking for in Ireland. Don't get me wrong, Johnny Sexton did do a lot of passes at flat at the line, but he doesn't necessarily, at least in his older age when I was watching, have the necessary mobility that Harry Crowley possesses when it comes to attacking the line with pace. To me personally, when you watch Sexton over the last 5 years, don't get me wrong, he's in his older age, so your mileage may vary. He's very, he likes to stay in the back, manage a little bit more, and while he will float past at the line, he's not necessarily taking it to the line at pace. Harry Crowley brings both to the table. He's going to actually attack the line, and not only that, he knows how to get skinny and evade defenders. I've seen him in that match at least 3 or 4 times go through 2 to 3 defenders at once, manage to pump the offload or just pump a ball and get absolutely smacked on the line of scrimmage. And I think that is a good thing for Ireland. They needed a guy with a little bit more mobility and who had the ability to have the game management skills that Sexton had in order to succeed in Andy Farrell's scheme. And when you look at Crowley, I think he's taken the cake over everyone else, including Ross Byrne and friends. But just looking at it, a lot of the highlights are easily showing that Dan Sheehan tried to start off his hat trick, with his little pump through first and second defender. But I think you're forgetting the fact of not only did he score that try by doing the same double pump, but he's getting really good at not only managing the Sexton loop, but also hitting the line and providing that support. Because on his try, if you look at the way he did when he started off that pump, he took the ball, 3-4 times in that set move and then still finished with it. So for him to be able to follow through and still have that kind of work rate to then push through the line and over the try zone, impressive. I'm really impressed with that. I think he could easily take the 10 jersey. I would argue this is early, lofty predictions, but I do think he could be the quote unquote better Marcus Smith of the North, just add a little bit more wiggle into his step. He definitely has the boot. He has the speed. I wouldn't necessarily has the elusiveness or the step of Marcus Smith, but I think he has the highest ceiling because of the team and coaches that he's with. Obviously, Marcus Smith is with Steve Borthwick, who, while a good coach, is more of if you look at his Leicester career, more of a downhill kind of a Welsh-style attack. So, and it shows with England. They like to play the high ball. They brought in a lot of big boys. We're going to talk about them later, but it's just a different scheme. I think him under Eddie Jones would have flowered more just because of the fact that Eddie actually values the mobility that Marcus Smith brings to the table. But who knows? We'll see. I definitely see Harry Crowley earning himself a Lions test. I would love to see him in Australia, knock on wood, but we will see with that. I think my other big highlight, just to me on the Irish side alone, was Calvin Nash. I think he has the ability to eclipse Mac Hansen, who has been knocked out injured for the 14 jersey just with consistent play. When you look, he may not have the wiggle or, straight beeline speed that Mac Hansen and friends have coming from Australia. But when you look at how he plays, he's willing to take these for the homies hits that like normally a lot of players would just say it's a business decision and just go for contact. He's gonna wanna get skinny, and with that try that he scored last week, he ended up wiggling through 3 people and scoring. And he said, as the announcer said, it's gonna hurt, but you're gonna get pay dirt out of it. And man, Calvin Nash, he just plays consistently. He never really has, at least so far, an off day. I would like to consider him the next Louis Rezamet of the North. Now, I know he doesn't have the speed again, but if you look at the way he's playing, and if you look at the 3 matches he's played in, he scored 2. I think he has a chance easily to have that Will Jordan of the North reputation now with Rezamet gone. Nash is just going to be that, just give him the ball and let him work. But, obviously he'll probably play second fiddle to Jonah Lowe, and that's fine. But I think Ireland needs to value that more. And now they have an option out wide that they can just use and go, and he's gone. And that's going to be a huge contributing factor to where they're going to go moving forward. I think it's only up from here for him. As for Italy, man, I talked about this with Scotland and Wales, and obviously they didn't get my memo. I'm not sure who didn't deliver it in the mailroom, whatever. But, we can't keep talking about this by simply letting tries go by ruck watching. See, I'm already confused because of how much this frustrates me. But to have, at moments, I've watched 5 to 8 guys just standing at the breakdown. That's how you let tries go. And they had that with the Jonah Lowe try. You had that with the Calvin Nash try, and you easily had that with the Harry Crowley try. What are you doing? Come on, guys. I mean, I understand that you guys are a young and still improving team, but I think that goes down to basic provincial level. No matter how good you are, you always have to go back to your fundamentals. And that's one of the fundamentals is get wide, always mark your man, look for space, and hit plays. And I think that's what really let it go. That game, arguably, in my opinion, should have been a lot closer than what it was, simply because of the fact of the Italians' defense was just, it was punishing from the 50 to like the 10-meter line, 22 maybe, if you can push it. But they just couldn't come out where it mattered most on the goal line and near in that 5-meter zone. And that's really what hurt them moving forward. And they're going to need to fix that. They're going to need to look at the drawing boards and just redo their entire defensive structure, I think, because of that. I think another thing that they really lacked was their ability to rebind and not be as tenacious in maintaining that maul bind. I'm not saying that Ireland and Dan Sheehan weren't going to score for all of those. They probably would have 95% of the time. But if you look at the way that the Italians played in the maul situations, they always stake their bind. They never release and try to go around and help the boys out. So that leaves 2 to 3 guys and a couple backs to then hold the line versus all the forwards just rebound on the back end. And whether or not you shear or not, that's not going to end well, and they're just going to push it over. Now, in that last one that Dan Sheehan scored to earn the hat trick, he did shear a little bit with the rest of the team to go. But if you look at the other 2, it was just flawless. It was just pushing it down the middle. And, that's how they got all those yellow cards and those penalties, because of the fact that they were just doing that alone. You can't just keep doing that and expecting the same results. Definition of insanity, people. We should know better. Obviously, even on that goal line play where they had an easy stop, you can't easily stop a guy like Dan Sheehan without having a forward or 2 there to at least try to hold him up, at least slow him down. You can't have Paolo Garbisi and friends standing on the line as if they're props. That's not how it's going to work. You need the big boys with big meat on the line, ready to charge, and at least add a little bit of a wall, people. Come on. We can't put skinny people. Mass does not equal mass. We got to do better. But anyway, to get off my frustration of that, my man of the match obviously was Harry Crowley. Hats off to him. As for my France versus Scotland match, Scotland gave that game away, in my personal opinion, despite the fact that they were holding possession and the territory margins. Apologize for my bunnies. And really just impressive kicking. Finn Russell, I think, held that 100% kicking margin. it's just splash plays by the French. It's hard to keep them out. Normally that would have been a Scotland thing. They're always known for their Duhan van der Merwe's, your Darcy Grahams and friends making some splash plays. Excuse me. But if you look at it, the French just did it and they kept them in despite being slowed down early. Ooh, nasty little bit in my nose. I think the Uni Antonio yellow card, which could have easily been a red, just because of the way that he dove with shoulder first, no attempt to wrap, high degree of danger into, I'm not sure, I forget who it was, the Scottish player's head, could have easily been a red, but Scotland thought it was theirs. They were already up early. They had 14 men on the field. I think they just took their foot off the gas and just let things go, let them be where they be. If you look at how the Scottish played, you didn't get a lot of those splash plays. Yes, you had guys like Hugh Jones, really helping manage the field a lot. That 15, I forget his name, was bowling out. He had that great offload to get their 9 in for that opening score. And I think that was probably their best set piece play that they had all game. Duhan van der Merwe obviously was trying to do his all, but if you look at the way that Gail Fiku and our man of the match, Louis Bielbarri playing, it's hard to stop. As for Bielbarri, I really think that he's earned that man of the match look, just because of the fact that if you look at how he played, it was fantastic all the way through. I actually thought he was Gabin Villiers the entire time he was playing, just because of, one, his red scrum cap, and two, not going to lie, I didn't really look at the French lineup going into this match. Apologies. But just the way he played was similar. His ability to hot step and then immediately off that step hit a quick acceleration, or his I think his shining play was the game-winning try. To have that ability to be basically blanketed by 4 to 5 to 1 on the wing and grub it, chip it over, and then score it with the pace that he had with the 15 closing in on that ball. And very impressive. I think he has a fine future with them. He looks to be like a young player, so I got to do a little bit more research on him, but damn, was that impressive. As for the final play, I know a lot of people are a little bit divided on that. Me personally, I definitely think that it was a held up initially, but then was dotted down as a try. I think Nick Berry should have let that thing play out, because you can clearly tell on the film that he dotted it down with no hands in the way. It was clear, there just needs to be better refereeing on that point. Obviously it's going to come down to the on-field decision more often than not, and Nick Berry showed no try held up, and that's why it wasn't able to be overturned. So, I've said it once and I'll say it again. I do not understand how Nick Berry is still considered world class after what he did to the Springboks, after what he did in the World Cup, and a bunch of other issues that he's had. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure the guy has had, a warranted, shellacking online. Some may have taken it too far, but you can't have a referee, again, I've said this once, I'll say it again, dictate the final moments of the match like that. You have to win it the way you should be winning it. And I don't think Nick Berry is good under the bright lights. I think Rugby Australia has probably one of the worst refs in the world. I definitely think Angus Gardner, shout out to the homie, is probably the only guy I would ever trust to ref from Australia, outside of, just in Southern Hemisphere alone, not with Jaco Paper gone, Ben O'Keefe kind of on the fence. Yeah, we're going to lose him, and it's going to be sad. But send Nick Berry back to reffing school, please. Please. As for the other match, obviously, let's get off the Nick Berry, train. I think the Welsh versus England match was basically more of the same. You had a lot of your second half collapses by Wales. A lot of it, obviously, some of it due to inexperience, but a lot of it, I think, was due to just discipline issues, between the knock-ons, the flagrant offsides penalties. The scrums were not that great. But if you look at just how they played, they should have been a lot better, given the fact that Warren Gatland was talking that talk about the fact that, Borthwick is just doing a blitz defense, which obviously Gatland helped invent in New Zealand. And if you supposedly know the defensive plan, you should have a thing to, your trump card and second half adjustment to then go against it, right? You would think. No. If you look at the way the Welsh played, they did not play against what the blitz defense is. Obviously, because of the aggressiveness of the blitz defense, you're going to have a lot of holes open out back. They did not capitalize on that as effectively as they should have. I thought it should have been more of a kicking game. You had Josh Adams. You had Rio Dyer, who's one of the best wingers in the North. I would argue if you just fed him the ball. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But you just didn't do it, and that's why you lost. You got to give it to your impact players, and they simply didn't. Touches mean something, and you can't just be not feeding these boys. I mean, on the bright side, though, you had guys like Thomas Raffel, you had Josh Adams going off. I think those are the only two real bright spots. Raffel was really just doing a lot between blocking kicks. He had a lot of turnover options. He runs the ball effectively well. I think his power is something that the Welsh have desperately needed in the forward pack, and his ability to just keep chugging the legs. Josh Adams looked borderline, I would say, reminiscent of his prime in the mid 2015s, 2019s, just because of the way he was able to just juke players and keep it with himself on the wing. And don't get me wrong, he probably would have been my man of the match just because of how he put Wales probably on the best positions that they've ever been throughout that entire match. But he just couldn't finish it, and that's just how the way the world works. And because of that, Wales lost. But I think the biggest question for me is, how do you not feed Rio Dyer and George North more? In the limited touches that George North and Rio Dyer had, they were great. Rio Dyer was running half for his life, half around the field, cutting it up, making a 15-meter gain, then getting stopped all by himself. You had George North, who I think maybe got the ball twice to three times in a phase play, and took the ball effectively, had 5-ish meters of gain line gain off of each run. I thought that was a great touch. Why do you not feed those guys? They're obviously they're setting up a lot of things. The George North runs, a lot of them help set up the Rio Dyer long plays, or the Josh Adam plays on the right wing, because he was playing on that side. But if you're not feeding him, none of these plays can happen. Your best players were out wide, and you just didn't get the ball there for whatever reason. That's how you lost. And to be held scoreless in the second half, not a good look. I thought the whole thing was with Warren Gatland was that he was a second half coach, that he hates being scoreless. He doesn't like starting off and finishing bad. You gotta fix that. I would imagine he was throwing probably some stuff around in the locker room, but obviously whatever motivation he had did not work, because just look at what the stat sheet says, and it was not pretty. As for England, I definitely think that retaining Elliot Daly and Henry Slade were huge in maintaining that composure throughout the match. Obviously you have George Ford, who I think should continue really to hold himself amongst the best in the world in terms of being a proper 10, despite the fact that he may not have the athletic talent of a Bowden Barrett or the juking of a Quade Cooper, or even the kicking of a Fronstein. He has the consistent IQ, that ability to see the field holistically and just play the space. And I think as a true 10, I think George Ford, I may have been convinced after this match, deserves to be up in that spot. I think Marcus Smith needs to, when he does come back, not saying for Six Nations, but just in general, I need to take a step back and learn from him, because there are a lot of things to learn from George Ford. The man is underrated, and I think we take him for granted in this era of dynamic fast 10s. As for just in general, my man of the match, I think it would have to go to George Ford, or I would argue could have been Ben Earl, because that try was insane. How he managed to just push his legs through and finish, great. He did great on scrums, great on rucks, and his ball carry was impeccable. I think nothing can ask for a more consistent back rower. Ben Earl, I think you've earned my man of the match for that. All right, let's travel a little bit south through another tragic situation, again in Rugby Australia. Cough, cough. Why are we not surprised? That the Melbourne Rebels have entered into voluntary administration last week. And obviously, for those who know, that's basically right on the wall for you're kind of screwed in that regard. But to those who do not know finances, it basically means an independent financier will take a look over the books, all the financial dealings, basically audit the team in a way, and kind of see where they can go, if they can pay the debtors or not, if they have to merge, make a decision, on future team functions. And that decision now, they had 8 days when they started last week. That decision should come within the next few days. Obviously, the leak came out, I believe it was last night, that they were possibly looking from Rugby Australia to force a merger with Moana Pacifica, which I think personally totally defeats the idea of what Moana Pacifica is supposed to be. For all those who don't know, maybe you Northern Hemisphere watchers or you North American watchers who just don't watch Super Rugby, the islands have been really impacted just because of the fact that they never really had the kind of development that players would get from New Zealand or Australia, which is why a lot of the island players would go there or other nations, and hence why they never really made it past the 90s when Super Rugby came out, because everyone wanted to play in New Zealand. So bringing Moana Pacifica back obviously helps the development of the islands. It's definitely improved their game. You can see it in Samoa, Tonga, Fiji. The inclusion of them and the Jura, I think, has helped and grown rugby so much in the South Pacific and in the Americas for all those Super Rugby watchers who do watch that. It defeats the purpose of having to have the Melbourne Rebels, which is a primarily, I'm not going to make this about race, but primarily white team, throwing them in with the rest of the Polynesian players in Moana Pacifica. The proposed team would be based in Auckland with the rest of Moana Pacifica and probably play out of Mount Smart with a little bit of games in Tonga. I don't know how you do it. Melbourne Pacifica, Moana Rebels. I don't know. I don't see it, and I think it downgrades and shows the level of importance and priority that Rugby Australia has for the islands in terms of where they can go. I think this only holds them back, and I hope this doesn't happen. Because of this, in that league, also they wanted to then bring in a Japanese or West Coast American team to replace them to keep it at a 12-team competition. The Japanese obviously makes a little bit of sense given the fact of the long rumored and basically writing on the wall merger of the top league with Super Rugby. They've already decided to have a group rugby championship of that range that has been announced, but I think it's basically there that the top league and Super Rugby will eventually merge in. I think it only leads for better competition between the Japanese. I think they're already a tier 1 top, maybe 7 tier 1 nation, and they definitely have the option to then grow, obviously, with their rejects from other countries who then come there, and legends of the game who then try to go there for their golden years to then try to beat up on their former teams. I think that'd be a great storyline. The media would eat it up. I would eat it up as a fan and enjoy a long career with that. The Japanese obviously are putting in a lot of money into the top league, and I think it shows eventually with the amount of pageantry and fans that they're growing, and it could only mean better things for Super Rugby, especially under the Silver Lake deal. I think for Americans, you have to look at the fact that you're basically smoking rocks if you allow a quote unquote West Coast USA team to go play Super Rugby. They can barely stay open. Okay. They barely have enough to fill a 2,500 seat stadium. They don't even have money to really pay their players a livable wage, let alone keep teams going. What are you going to take? You got what? Seattle, Utah, I guess, San Diego, kind of LA. Who's going to pay for those travel costs? It's multi-thousands of dollars to get one person to Japan or to New Zealand and Australia. Trust me, I did the math. It is, how are you going to get a whole team, trainers, cargo, all that, shipped there, overnighted it back, have the time zone difference play into mind when, a USA team has to then play, I don't know, say San Diego goes and San Diego has to play Anthem, and they then have to travel, deal with the time zone difference, and then travel back. That's a lot of time lost and a lot of practices not gained. Anyone seem unfair advantage? No, I don't know. That's just me. I'm just saying, if you can barely finance your team and on top of that, be halfway around the world, kind of like South Africa, it makes no sense. Just stay in your time zone. I would rather it be a full Super Rugby Americas, just absorb the MLR and just have it be the South Americans and the Canadians versus the Americans. Why can't we just do that? Make it be regional. You have that way. You have the Americas in Super Rugby America. You have East Asia and the Pacific with Super Rugby in general, and then you have Europe and South Africa with obviously the URC. And if you want, hell, make the Premiership its own thing. If not, bring them together. I think merging of the leagues to make 3 big leagues would be huge for rugby. That's a story for another day. I definitely think I could go off on a topic like that for half an hour, but we'll save that for another day. It's I know that something's going to happen, obviously, because the writing's on the wall, but they're going to have to think of something better, because they've already denied that rumor. And I would too if I found out that got let out. But you got to find a better solution to this, just because you're hurting more people than you actually are helping. And I'm sure there's something better out there. Maybe do what the MLR has been doing, unfortunately. I can't believe I'm saying this. Disperse them throughout the rest of the teams. Provide financial aid to the rest of the teams in Super Rugby, Australia. Maybe have them have no salary cap hit and have Australia just take the hit. They've already taken out massive loans from World Rugby. Why not do some more? I don't know. Anything else? Y'all got hope. But let's jump off the tragedy train and go up north to a little place I like to call Vancouver for another great solution to end our show. I am very happy to announce that Vancouver continues to sign Arrow talent, and they're basically fulfilling my position as the new home of Rugby Canada. A lot of them want to stay at home, and I think this will help now with the signing of Deshaun Bowen, the wing from the Arrows, who had a fantastic highlight-worthy year. Stat sheet don't really speak for itself. I got to cover a lot of the Arrows last year for the MLR, and man, let me tell you, they were always my second favorite team in the MLR comp, and Deshaun Bowen was a big help for that. That guy, despite only scoring 5 tries, is a freak of nature, okay? Every time he touched the ball, he is huge. He is a shredded huge. He runs like a tight end with the speed of a wide receiver, okay? And he finishes everything he touches. He's saved the Arrows so many times from really terrible situations to at least get them within 3 points, or get them a tie, or hell, even get them a win. The guy is a freak, and I'm glad to see Vancouver sign him. He has a consistent game time saving heroics, like I said. He had a hat trick in where he basically saved the Arrows and helped them win the game. The rest of his tries, obviously, like I said, were game saving. He's just the only way to go is up from there. And he already has the finishing. I think the only thing he would really need to work on is his passing and possibly a little bit of defense. But offensively, man, with ball in hand, that guy's a freak. And I can't believe that Toronto, eventually had to fold and let him go. But Vancouver's a perfect place for him and his family. Let the man cook. He's going to be great with Milani Nana in the wing. I'm sure he's going to learn a few things from him as well. Expect the unexpected. He will be impossible to stop. Here's hoping that it becomes a 3-league super conference. Let's go. Up the boys. And we'll see you Friday for a little Six Nations preview. Thanks a lot, everyone. Peace.